Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Just everybody in the chat, make sure that you can type, that you can hear me. We actually just hit 9.8 thousand subscribers exactly right now. Right before I started the stream, we had one less sub. So whoever the last sub was, thank you very much. We are currently 200 subscribers away from actually hitting our 10K goal, which is very, very exciting that I was able to do it within literally 5 months of starting the channel full time. And so, guys, this is episode 3 of the On Point Politics show, and today I'm going to be doing sort of a commentary on both political parties. You're saying that it sounds echoey? That's strange. You're saying that the audio sounds echoey? Type in the chat to see if it's sounding good or not. Let me actually, you know what? I might as well just do this. We just go ahead and do this really quick. I'm gonna put a poll for you guys to answer, just so I can see if the audio is sounding good or not. Just because I'm just trying to make sure that it's all going well before I start the show. Let's see here. So, okay, well, I'm gonna let that poll come in, but Guys, make sure to hit the like button. You know, if you are in here, please hit the like button. Low speaker volume. Interesting. That's weird. 300. Okay, what about, guys, what about, and actually, you know what? Hold on. What about now, guys? It should be sounding a little better now. Let me know in the chat if it does sound good or not. It should be sounding better. I just had to change a mode on the back of the mic, but I think it should be sounding a lot better already. Is it? It should be. It should be good now. The audio should be good now. I'm gonna see what chat says, but I think that it should pretty much be good. What's up, Tommy Lee? What's up, Tommy Leah? How you doing? Yo, what's good? What's up, Precision Politics? How are you? What's up, Owen, for Congress 2024? What's up, guys? And so today, guys, I'm gonna be doing a stream, kind of going over my message on point. If I can't do call-in streams, can my dad do it? He's like 60. I mean, yeah. He could hop on if he wants to. He could do it. Tommy Lee says Mike's a little echoey. That's weird. I wasn't really having that issue the other day. That's kind of strange. I have to change my name. What do you mean? Well, either way, guys. So as of today, you know, I'm going to be doing just a kind of video, you know, kind of a message to both political parties here. And we're going to be starting with the Democratic Party because they have massively fumbled the ball. You know, if we look at, you know, if we go back to the 1990s even, you could see, you know, they were winning Montana, they were winning Missouri by 10, Arkansas by 17. It was actually more Democratic than even New York or even Vermont. You know, only less Democratic than Massachusetts and Rhode Island at the time, which is pretty interesting that Arkansas was one of the more Democratic states at the time. And so what's quite interesting, you know, to really look at, people are saying that it sounds like my audio is coming in twice. Hold on, guys. All right, I should have fixed it. It should be sounding better now. All right, so pretty much what I'm going to be looking at here is, yeah, I just fixed it because it was picking up twice. So pretty much, guys, what happened here is Bill Clinton became the president, you know, with a third-party scenario with Ross Perot drawing a lot of votes nationwide. If you actually look, you know, Clinton got 43%, Bush got like around 37%, and Ross Perot ended up getting 18.9% under the Reform Party, which is a very large, you know, vote share, and that is a pretty large vote share. And he even came close to winning Maine's 2nd district. He was within 4 points. He was within 10 points. Well, really, it was more like 12 points of winning Maine's 1st, and winning Maine at large. He was actually only 8 points away. He was even in 2nd place against Bush, which was pretty interesting. And he was getting over like 20% in some of the Great Plains states. He even got 2nd place in Utah, which is pretty interesting. And he almost came close in Alaska, which was also pretty interesting to look at as well. And what's going on here is the Democratic Party back then was able to coalesce a working class coalition in the Rust Belt, you know, large enough in order to defeat an incumbent president. That incumbent president was able to win pretty easily. They managed to win, you know, by quite a substantial amount, actually. They were able to win, you know, with a lot of electoral votes. And I'm actually going to put the safe margin to 10 because that's what we use in our videos now. So this is what the margins looked like with a plus 10, you know, electorate. You're going to see here, you know, Iowa was a safe Democratic state back then, which is pretty interesting. New York and West Virginia were competitive, and Wisconsin was one of the bluer states of the nation, which I find pretty interesting. But if we look at this, the Republicans were really down, you know, when it came to, you know, the working class vote. they were really struggling to kind of get this coalition to really turn out for them in certain places, to the point where it became detrimental to the Republican Party, for them turning out these voters. And what's quite interesting is, if we look at 1996, the Democrats actually did even better. States like Virginia, they still, they got closer, but they weren't necessarily able to win it. Colorado did go blue because of a large third-party vote share. Ross Perot was in this election, but got way less of the vote. Bill Clinton and Bob Dole did significantly better than their counterparts. He performed, but Clinton actually did pretty well in Florida. He ended up winning a lot of places by quite a bit here. Texas was under 5 points in this scenario, which is pretty interesting. It was also only a 3.5 point win for H.W. Bush, which is pretty interesting. And places like Tennessee still voted for Clinton, but they were a little bit closer. Even a state like Kentucky was actually pretty competitive with Dole on the map, and this was like a Democrat +8 national environment at the time. And so the Democrats were really good at kind of coalescing this white working class vote. Back then, they had a lot more support from unions and things of that nature, so they were able to really draw this coalition of voters together. However, their problem here, the major problem was, when you go and you look at 2000, now you see there's a big difference, because Bush was able to kind of coalesce a coalition of people, especially some former Democrats here. He was able to flip Arkansas by a couple of points, flip Louisiana. He was able to get Tennessee, Missouri, which at the time were somewhat competitive. He was able to win West Virginia by a few points. He won Virginia by 8 points, Colorado by 8.4. These used to be very Republican states back then. And then back then, the Republicans were really good at maintaining their college-educated voter support. So even if they were kind of 50-50 with white working class voters, the Republican Party used to do a lot better with the college-educated vote. That's why Minnesota's voting to the right of Michigan, for example. And West Virginia was competitive with Iowa, with New Mexico, but Colorado and Virginia were like 8-point victories. And Bush was able to win Florida from Clinton's massive victory from 1996. Bush was even able to win New Hampshire, and you could argue that the third party candidate kind of caused that, but it really is something to look for here. And what's interesting, guys, is even Maine 2nd was voting Democrat back then. And if you look at 2004, you see that Republicans were able to improve. Texas or Tennessee got way more Republican. Louisiana got much more Republican. Arkansas gained a couple points for Bush. Missouri was like a 7-point win for Bush. He was able to win it relatively easily. Montana was even like a 20-point win for him. However, it was getting more competitive. He actually won it by a bigger amount the first time. Then the second time, Colorado was also seen trending to the right, despite Bush winning the popular vote by a bigger margin. And Virginia was also actually a little bit more Republican than the previous election, which is pretty interesting. New Hampshire ended up flipping back to the Democrats. Michigan ended up getting more competitive, and Pennsylvania did as well. Wisconsin actually got more Democrat, which was interesting. And Kerry did a little bit better in Minnesota than Gore did. And he was able to perform in Maine 2nd District pretty respectably, but he lost ground in a place like California, where it did fall under the safe category. Kerry was pretty much competitive in Oregon still, and New Mexico and Iowa did flip in this scenario. So Bush did improve, and again, this was mainly due to Hispanics nationwide kind of voting for Bush, and also, college-educated voters really sticking their support for him over time. And so that was what the Republican Party was good at, and the Democrats were sort of good at getting, their white working class coalition. That's why they were able to still win Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, while losing states like New Mexico, Colorado, Virginia, and Nevada, which nowadays, if Trump were to be winning those states, the Rust Belt would have gone, red at that point. And so if we look at, a state, in 2008, Obama completely flipped the working class on McCain's head and was able to kind of flip some of the working class, but also flip a lot of college educated voters that really weren't kind of messing with, the Republicans at the time, especially due to the big economic collapse. And I feel like that's one of the main reasons you saw the college educated vote really shift to Democrats, was because of the 2008 economic crash. And I feel like the same thing is going to happen with the Republicans. I think a lot of Republican voters, a lot of college educated voters, not as much of a shift as it was from like 2004 to 2008 from Republican to Democrat, but I think a lot of Democratic college educated voters are going to start shifting back. You're going to start seeing a regression in that kind of voting in the next cycle, just because a lot of people are really looking at, okay, well, is this candidate really for the working class? Are they really going to be promoting policies that would be really beneficial, to me? So that is the main thing that people are looking for. And so, in 2008, Obama was kind of able to flip it on its head. And then in 2012, he was able to do that relatively successfully. He ended up, Virginia did get a little bit closer, and Ohio did as well. Indiana ended up flipping back pretty easily, and North Carolina ended up flipping back by, 2 points, but it was still a big win. Romney, improved in Georgia, even improved in Arizona by like 0.6%. So that kind of did happen, and Missouri did get significantly more Republican, as well as a place like Montana. The Dakotas got a little bit more Republican as well. Texas was pretty Republican back then, and Florida kind of held for Obama. And so back then, the Democrats were really good at getting a sort of working class coalition, just good enough for them to be able to win elections. And they completely dropped the ball. What happened the past 20 years is you have your average voter. So let's say my finger is the average voter, right? Let's say that this is the average voter today. And you have the right and the left. So the left's over here and the right's over here. Basically what happened is the left was right here, and it started running all the way that way, and the right side's right here. And so by the time that somebody in the middle, or even leaning a little bit left, by the time that they get to 2016, 2020, they are considered right-leaning independent / even somewhat conservative, at some point. That's basically what ended up happening to a lot of people. Like, a lot of people, their beliefs didn't really change, but the party changed. And that's definitely what happened to the Democrats. The Democrats went from, working class, very conservative on even some issues. They were very supportive of some form of border security. A lot of Democrats weren't for same-sex marriage for quite a while. Some major political buyout must have occurred in the 2000s to get the Democratic Party that we have today. And it reflects in Donald Trump's victory in 2016, because he was able to flip Iowa and Ohio pretty easily. He was able to do very well in some of these rural states. He did very well here. Now, Utah did get a little bit closer because of the fact that there was a large third-party vote share there with McMullen on the ballot, because they were trying to throw off the ballot there and see if it would hurt Trump, but it actually ended up hurting Clinton in the state, funny enough. If they would have left Clinton and Trump by themselves, Clinton probably could have gotten Utah within 10 points, which is pretty interesting to see. Biden didn't necessarily get it within 10 points because he's relatively unpopular with some rural voters on average. And so if you look at Clinton, Trump did very well in some of these states. He made these solid Republican, basically completely solid Republican at this point in time. And when you look at a place like Florida, it was able to transform from its victories back then, and it's just not looking good, for Clinton. She lost, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, states that she was supposed to win fairly easily because Obama won them easily, so she assumed she had them in the bag, but she lost ground with the white working class voters up there to the point where it really hurt her, where she needed to do well. Now, Trump knew that he could afford to lose some support in Texas. He knew he could afford to lose some support in Georgia and in Arizona, because if you compare Georgia from 2012 to 2016, it did get closer, but not enough for Clinton to actually flip it. He knew he actually gained ground in North Carolina, which is pretty interesting. And in New Hampshire, he actually gained a lot of ground. It ended up getting within, a point. And in terms of raw votes, it was actually the closest state in 2020, which is pretty interesting. And he knew he could afford to lose some support in Arizona as well. And what ended up happening was he gained support in Colorado and Nevada. He gained some support in New Mexico. He gained support in Minnesota and some of the Rust Belt. And yes, he did lose some support in Texas, but he knew he could afford to lose some support in the Sun Belt, but was able to make up that support with, gaining Rust Belt support. And that put the Republicans on the top that year. Now in 2020, you'd see that, Colorado and Virginia are solid Democratic states, even more so than they were Republican in the early 2000s. And you could see there's a stark difference where affluent college educated areas have swung massively to the left. Colorado, New Hampshire, Virginia, Minnesota, even to an extent like Maine, because Maine actually is more Democratic now than what it was even when Gore ended up winning it. Oregon did, New Mexico did, Arizona did, Georgia did as well. So there's a lot in North Carolina compared back then did shift. But if you look at some places with a lot of white working class voters, like Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Tennessee, West Virginia, they got much more Republican. And even Ohio and Iowa got more Republican. And the Rust Belt as a whole did too. So you see that there's a big difference with, college educated voters shifting to the left and white working class voters shifting to the right. And that's the big shift that we've seen from both parties. And so now the issue for the Democrats is they've completely dropped the ball on certain issues. The border is not looking good for them at all. The border is something that Biden's really fumbled very badly, and the economy is something that they fumbled really badly compared to the 1990s. And that's why you saw Biden, who realistically should have won pretty easily. I mean, compared to the times, a lot of people were expecting a very easy Biden win, and that is not what happened at all. Biden actually barely ended up winning, very, very close. And realistically, if this was an election where the Democrats really had a grip on their white working class vote, Biden probably would have ended up winning the same amount of states, and he probably could have picked off North Carolina and possibly even flipped Florida in this electoral college scenario. And he could have probably gotten his 349 electoral college votes, possibly even gotten Maine. So if the Democrats would have held their base pretty well, they would have been able to predict that Biden would have been able to win very easily. But because they did not, some states like Florida, North Carolina, and Maine second did not even go blue, and places like the Rust Belt in Georgia and Arizona were a lot closer than initially expected. And this is the map we ended up getting last time. And if you look at the current data, Trump is up by 2.7%. He's up by quite a bit in the national aggregate. And according to the latest model from mine, Trump is winning the election extremely easily. It is a super easy victory for the former president, according to my latest model. Now, my latest model was reverse engineered from 2020 to be as accurate as possible. Biden's approval rating has actually gone down from the last time I updated the information. And if I go over here and I actually go ahead and update the bottom section of the model, which calculates the estimated popular vote, and the way I'm doing is I'm basically looking at the approval ratings of both candidates. That's pretty much what I'm doing. So if we look at, if we're going to go over here, Trump favorable RCP, if we go ahead and look at that, we're going to see that, Trump is doing fairly well in his approval rating. Right now, he's currently sitting at exactly 43%. or 43% exact, and that puts him at 3.8 in the popular vote. And the thing with the popular vote is that it is the approval ratings are a pretty good indicator of how to estimate the electorate overall. And so that gives us a 3.8 plus Trump lead in the aggregate. And the problem is that doesn't even account for third party votes. So if you were to add 2 points to Trump for third party votes, that puts Trump ahead by about 5.8% in the aggregate, because roughly 2 to 3 points were taken away from Hillary in 2016, and this is the national aggregate. And so if you were to actually go ahead and do that, Trump wins this upcoming election very easily. He ends up winning this thing extremely easily according to the latest model. And I'm going to go ahead and plug in the data. So he would win, the Great Plains pretty easily. And this is accounting for, blacks moving a lot to the right, including Hispanics, white voters, Asian voters. Iowa and Ohio, these states would be states that Trump would win fairly easily. He's currently projected to win it by 19.3, Iowa. And if we look at Ohio, he's projected to win that by 19.4%. It's actually even voting to the right of Iowa now, which is fairly interesting. And Texas is a 17-point win for Trump. And if we look at Florida, he's actually winning Florida by 16.9%, and that puts him at 215 electoral votes already. And if we look at California, Biden's winning that by around 15 points, which is close to what polling could suggest. And if we look at a state, for example, Connecticut, Delaware, they're under the 10-point threshold. Massachusetts, Vermont, Maryland, and DC, I'd expect them to be pretty solid. But even if you looked at Maryland, it's a 22-point win, and the polls have it as like a 17-point win for Biden. So the model is not necessarily that off from where the model is, where things are looking at. It's really not. And a lot of people are kind of trying to dismiss the polls, but it's just not dismissible. Washington and Oregon kind of vote together. They're both like 7-point victories each. Colorado actually falls under the 4-point margin. It falls under the margin there. If we go ahead and look at the state of New Mexico, it's a lean Trump margin as of right now. If we go to Alaska, we're going to see Donald Trump is actually safe in this scenario. If we go ahead and look at Hawaii, even Hawaii in this electoral scenario is right above the safe margin. It's like a 10-point win for Biden as of right now. And if we look at Illinois, it's actually under 5 points. It's voting kind of in line with Colorado. It's actually voting to the right of Colorado by a little around 0.2 percentage points, which is very fascinating. And if we look at Georgia, Georgia's actually safe on the map, including North Carolina. Even these states, are plus 12.8 and plus 10.4. That puts those states in the safe Republican column. Wisconsin is in the safe Republican column. Pennsylvania and Michigan are not in that column yet. They are 8 and 9 points respectively, and Arizona is still a likely margin in the scenario here. But Nevada is an 11-point win for Trump, so he wins that by a safe margin too. And if we look at Minnesota, which is regularly a Democratic state, it's projected to go a lean margin for Trump as of right now. And if we look at Virginia, for example, that's a half-point victory for Donald Trump. If we look at the state of Rhode Island, it's right above a 10-point victory. New Jersey was listed as, I believe, exactly 4-point win for Biden. And if we look at New Hampshire, he's winning that by a lean margin. If we look at New York, he's winning that by a little bit over 10 points. Nebraska's second is a 3.7 win for Trump. And if we look at Maine, he's winning Maine's second fairly easily by 19 points. Maine's first is still above 10, but Maine at large is a 0.8 percentage point victory for Trump, which puts him winning the Electoral College 347 electoral votes to Biden's 191. So Trump, according to the model, wins the election fairly easily. Now, is this going to be the result on election day? Probably not. We don't know how accurate it's going to be. This is the first time I use this model. Hopefully it's as accurate as we possibly can make it. But this is what the current data is suggested by this model, where Gold Crown Politics' side of the model got the entire election correct last time. When he predicted the popular vote to be Biden plus 5.2, he was able to get every single state correct, and my model was adjusted and reverse engineered to 2020 as much as we possibly could adjust it by. So we are really trying to be as accurate as we can, and right now Donald Trump, according to the data, is just is mopping the floor with Biden. He is absolutely mopping the floor with him. And if this ends up being the result, a lot of people are not going to expect this. A lot of people are going to think it's a close race, but it's just not what the data is suggesting right now. Now, could the tide change? Possibly, but Sir Flamelot says my model suggests a 2-point Moreno win. Well, if Trump is winning Ohio by 17, or 20 something points, I think it was, or like 19 points, Trump is not, Moreno would not win Ohio by 2. Moreno would probably be winning Ohio by anywhere from 8 to 12 points in that scenario. He'd be winning Ohio fairly easily, actually. He'd be winning Ohio fairly easily if that was the case. Oh, and by the way, if this was the result, the Democrats could kiss the Senate goodbye, because Wisconsin would be an insta Republican flip. Because if Trump's really winning Wisconsin by 10, Tammy Baldwin doesn't have a chance. Even McCormick could probably even win, because he wins Pennsylvania by 9. He could possibly even win in this scenario. Kerry Lake would have for sure become the next senator. You know, Nevada, same thing. Sam Brown would have probably won by 5 here, possibly 4 points. Even Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar would have been within striking distance of losing. She probably would end up winning by under 10 points. New Hampshire, the governor's race, super easy win for the governor there, because, I mean, at that point, it wouldn't even be... At that point, the Republican would definitely be winning the governorship. In New Jersey, there'd be a lot of things stirring there for potential governorship pickup if New Jersey was actually that close. And if this ends up being the result for the Democrats or the Republicans, just in general, this ends up being the result in 2024, the Democrats completely dropped the ball and will probably not win an election ever again, unless this is the other scenario that I'm going to look at. Me for $2 says, can you leak your model? Well, I'm gonna probably end up releasing a public version of it, but I'm not going to leak it in its current form as of right now. But I think I probably could end up releasing the model publicly so people could, you know, end up playing around with it. But it would probably be a copy of it. It would be like an exact copy of the model per se. And so, alright guys, we're gonna see here that. And here's the interesting thing. If you were to plug in, you know, Harris, you know what we're actually gonna do? We're not even gonna do that. We're actually going to plug in Newsom, because I want people to see this. I really want people to see this, because I don't think people understand how bad Newsom actually was. Like, Newsom was pretty bad. Like, it was atrociously bad, to the point where it would have not been sustainable at all. Funny enough, they did a poll with Swift in it for some reason, which was super weird. And it's funny because then they also did a Biden versus Kennedy versus a West poll, so they included Kanye West as the Republican nominee. He's like at 6% nationally. I just think that's kind of funny. And then they have the actual race tied. I think that's just kind of hilarious that Kanye's like at 6% or whatever. But if we keep going, there was a bunch of polls where they polled a lot of people against Trump, and it showed Gavin losing the national popular vote by like 12 points or something like that. I wonder where it is, because it was looking really bad for him. It was looking bad. Like, it was not good. Funny enough, with Haley, with third-party votes, Haley actually does really bad. Kennedy's getting a lot of support, which is fairly interesting. Trump versus Newsom polls. Well, actually, what we're gonna do is we're actually going to do Biden versus Haley polls, so you guys could see what that would have looked like, because it was looking bad, like really bad. Like, it was not looking good for it wasn't looking good for Haley at all. Now we're gonna do it with the third party votes, because that is the actual matchup. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go down here and I'm gonna find every single poll from the past couple of months that basically has Haley on it with third-party votes, and we're going to combine the average, and then we're going to look at their approval ratings, and we're going to fill out an electoral map based on that, just so you guys could have seen, you know, where it would have been. Miami S Kitchens for 5, thank you very much for the donation. I greatly appreciate the donation. Haley is basically the conservative mirror of Kennedy. I don't know about that. Oh, you're talking about RFK? Well, then that kind of makes sense, but I don't even know about that. I'd say that she'd be a lot better. Okay, so Biden up by 3 in the first one. And if we keep going, another Haley -7. And then we have, let's keep going, another one, she's up by, Biden's up by 3. Then she was up to, one poll. Haley was up by 2 in a poll, so her lead basically gets canceled out in the aggregate. Then Haley's down by 8, down by 8 points in this one as well. And this is going back to like February, by the way. You know, there was a Haley poll that was like +18 or something like that with likely voters. I don't know why I don't know why that was a thing, but I guess it was. There was a +18 poll, and then we have, Biden, Haley up by 4, but then there was a poll here where Biden's up by 18, so that +18 poll also gets canceled out as well in the aggregate. So it was not looking great, and Biden was up 1 here. Haley was up 9. Haley was up 9 there. Haley was up 1, and I think we're gonna stop here. So we would have had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 polls. So basically Biden would have been down, or would have been up in the aggregate by like 0.8%, essentially, right? 0.8%, and the swing would have been 4.5 minus 8.0 would have swung the national electorate 3.7 points to the right, and you have Biden's incumbent approval rating, and you see that, okay, it's still a pretty easy win. However, when you look at the popular vote, things might be a little bit different, because if you look at Haley's approval rating, it's a lot lower than Biden's. Her raw approval rating is a lot lower. So if we actually go over here, we're going to look at this. Her favorability is all the way down at 32. Biden's is still at 39.3, and so that spells a victory here of 7.3%, and it seems like third parties would hurt her. So we'll add 2 points to Biden, so that's a 9.3 lead. And so if this was the scenario, and 9.3 minus 4.5 is a minus 4.8 shift to the left. And so if this would have been the scenario, she would have lost the general election. She would have lost. Now, again, it wouldn't have been by an electoral landslide, but she still would have lost the election. And this also suggests that Biden's turnout is pretty low, and the reason why Trump is winning by such a big amount is because his turnout is pretty high. But if you look at this, just so you guys could see before I do the Trump versus Harris or the Trump versus Newsom matchup, because that is going to be unfathomable. Like, that's going to be really scary to look at. But, you know, Haley's up in Alaska by 7. She's up in Florida by the same Trump margin from 2020. She's down in Arizona by 2.7%. She's down in Georgia by 4. Biden's doing relatively well in some of these states. Colorado up by 16. And the Northeast is completely safe Democrat, including Illinois. And in this scenario, if we keep looking, you're going to see Illinois 17-point victory. Biden actually does better there than 2020. Iowa falls under a 10-point victory for Haley in the scenario. She still does well. And again, this is not even me tampering with the polling. If I were to actually plug in all the national polls with her, she'd be doing a lot worse here, because some states, like even Ohio, she was actually down by a few points. So this is not even me tampering with the approval, you know, this is not even me tampering with the state polls. This is just me tampering with the popular vote. In the aggregate, you know, she's only up in Ohio by like a point or so, or 8 points or so. North Carolina is a really close victory for her. It says it's a 0.02 percentage point win for her. And if we look at Texas, it's actually only a 2.6 percentage point win for Trump. Florida actually ends up voting to the right of Texas by quite a bit in this scenario. Pennsylvania is a lean margin of victory here. If we look at Virginia, it's a almost 13-point win for Biden there. New Hampshire is like it is slightly a larger victory than what it was in 2020. Minnesota is around the similar margin to New Hampshire. Wisconsin is a till margin for Biden, so Biden would actually barely win it in this scenario. And if we look at Michigan, it's a 2.8 percentage point victory, 2.9, so it's similar to 2020. Pennsylvania does get more Democratic. If you look at Nebraska's second, it gets more Democratic in this scenario. So you see not a lot of good signs for Nikki Haley at all. Not a lot of good signs. Hawaii would more than likely end up being safe. And if you look at Nevada, it's a 2.3 percentage point victory for Biden. Very, very similar to the 2020 performance. And New Mexico would be a 13.4 percentage point victory for Biden. So if Biden and Haley would have went at it, Biden basically would have recreated his 2020 electoral college result based on all the data that we had from that election. As of right now, Biden pretty much would have recreated his 2020 result, and Texas would have been a lot closer. North Carolina would have been on the verge of flipping. I wouldn't even be surprised if he actually won North Carolina in this scenario. Jay Clip says, do you think Tulsi Gabbard could be Secretary of State in the new Trump administration? I mean, it's possible. I'm not going to go out here on a limb and say that that's for sure going to happen, because I don't know, but I think that it could potentially happen. It depends on what is going on in the political climate. I will be getting to the Republican Party in a second, because I do have to talk to them too, because things are not looking great for them either. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to look at the national favorability ratings for Trump and Newsom and look at the aggregate that we had. So Trump versus Newsom polls. So what's interesting is that if we look at this, Trump is beating. So look at this. He leads Gavin Newsom 46% to 36% in the national popular vote in the aggregate. So that's already plus 10. And that's a 14.5 percentage point shift to the right, or like 13.5. Let me see how much is that? Yep, 14.5. I was right. So that already puts the election way out on a limb for Trump already. That's already pretty bad, right? And that's already pretty bad. And if we look here, Trump's favorability rating is 43. Gavin Newsom's favorability rating, Gavin Newsom approval rating, I don't know if there's actually a national poll. I don't know if there's a national poll here. Well, it says 37 here.
It's pretty, yeah, it's gonna be pretty hard because I don't really know if you see even here Newsom ended up winning that by 18. See, I don't think they have a so weird. They don't. Hmm. That's so weird that they don't have like a national average for him. I'm going to use that 37% for now. And so Trump was at 43, 37. That's a +6 national environment. That is a 10.5 percentage point shift to the right. And so if that result were to occur, we'd see a pretty bad result for him. It would basically be the same map as before. Like, it'd be the same map with Washington and Oregon being lean. New York would be under 10. All the Rust Belt states would be safe, but New Jersey, Illinois, and Colorado would all be on the verge of flipping. So essentially, you'd have an election where all of these states are safe. So you would basically have all of these being safe Republican. The Democratic turnout would be very low. Hawaii would even be under 10 points in this scenario. California would be a 12-point win. Washington, Oregon would be lean. Both of them would be. Connecticut and Delaware would be likely. Probably even Rhode Island too. New Jersey, Illinois, and Colorado were all tilt Democrat on the model. And Georgia, North Carolina, I presume, would be likely safe. Look, New Mexico is likely in the scenario. Even Minnesota is a likely Republican state for Trump, so he would win Minnesota very easily. Michigan is a no-brainer. Maine at large would even vote for Trump by 4.4%. Maine's first would even be a likely Democratic state, and New York would vote under 7 points. New Hampshire would be a 4.6 percentage point victory for Trump. Even Virginia would be like a 4.2 percentage point win, and the Rust Belt would obviously be all safe. And you have Nebraska's second here, which would end up being a 7.3 percentage point win for Trump. So essentially, it's the same map as Biden, but the margins just look a lot worse. And Colorado, Illinois, and New Jersey would be all at risk for Biden or for Gavin to basically lose them. So the result could range anywhere from 347 all the way up to 390, which would be really insane if that were to be the case. Like, if that were to actually be the matchup, that would be insane if that was the case. All these states are basically prone to flipping. So Donald Trump could win anywhere upwards up to 400 electoral votes in this scenario. So Gavin would have been a bad candidate for the Democrats to put up, and I guess they kind of were able to analyze that ahead of time before trying to replace Biden. They kind of realized that that was his best shot politically, for example. And so now we're going to be getting to the Republicans, because you guys too, you there's a problem with you guys, because you guys can't seem to figure out that young people need guidance. Young people don't want to be Democrats. Like, it's not a, for whatever reason, there are Republicans that just think, oh, young people just want to be Democrats because whatever, and they kind of group all Gen Z together. That is the biggest political mistake that the party could do, because if they were actually smart, they'd try to reach out to these voters, because they could easily build a new demographic, a new voting bloc with these people, because they're going to be looking forward to the Republican Party to bring change, to this scenario. And the Republican Party is obviously not smart enough to do this, and so they kind of alienate that group. And another thing that Republicans really suck on is abortion. That's the main thing. That's their main crutch. They really suck on abortion. And the problem with Ron DeSantis and Gavin is that I think that even though I believe that Gavin is way more superior, I think even though DeSantis is far more superior than Gavin, I still think Gavin beats him in the Electoral College. I still think that Gavin beats him because Ron DeSantis just has I don't think he would be able to draw the support in the Rust Belt that he would need in order to pull it off. Now, I think in Texas and Florida, he pulls it off. I think he probably ends up winning Texas and Florida by over 10. Same thing for Iowa and Ohio. But Iowa and Ohio may even vote slightly to the left of Texas and Florida. Like, Texas and Florida may actually be the two states that zoom to the right because of DeSantis. But all these deep Democratic states that would traditionally vote, basically, likely Democrat because of Trump are going to vote safe now. And a Maine second would be under 10 points. Maine at large would probably end up going to Gavin by like 5 or 6 points. New Hampshire, I'd assume, would probably go to Gavin by 4. 2028, Virginia would go by about 6 points to Biden. Colorado, I'd see it probably voting for Gavin by over 10, or possibly it's like an 8 or 9 point win for Gavin, maybe. New Mexico could be more competitive just because of the fact that, there's a lot of Hispanic shifting, but even still, it would still not flip to DeSantis. I think that DeSantis probably loses Nebraska's second. And yes, North Carolina could probably be likely Republican, and Georgia could probably be lean Republican. However, Minnesota, likely Dem. Michigan, a lean Dem. You'd have more than likely Arizona tilt to Gavin in this scenario. You'd have Pennsylvania lean to Gavin in this scenario. And then Wisconsin would end up going to Democrat, and possibly Nevada goes to Republican. So if Gavin and DeSantis were to kind of go at it, this is where I think the map would probably end up staying at for now. And I'd probably see Alaska even fall within 10 points. I think Alaska would go below 10 points, even before Texas and Florida in the scenario. Maybe Texas is within 10 points, is possibly like an 8 or 9 point win for DeSantis. He probably wins it somewhat decently, but I think that Gavin would make some inroads compared to a big, large Trump victory from 2024. And so, guys, it's not looking good for the Republicans in the future either, because who are they going to put up? Who are they going to put up against Gavin to beat him? Who are they going to put up? DeSantis is their best shot, and DeSantis can barely even debate somebody on a stage. It's just the truth. And even though, yes, in the debate with Gavin, he seemed pretty with it, it's just optically, it's different because it's a Fox News debate. Of course, everyone's going to think DeSantis is better. The debate's designed for DeSantis to do well. But in terms of a national debate, I think Gavin one-ups him just in pure optics. I think so. That's what I'm thinking as of right now. But guys, that is the end of the stream tonight. This is it for today. I really appreciate everybody who tuned into the stream. I'm going to be trying to stream as much as I can. Obviously, a new video is going to drop tomorrow. Guys, if you are all in here and you have a friend that hasn't subscribed to the channel, there's about 29 of you guys in here. If you guys are in here and you have a friend that hasn't subscribed, 29 of you guys could gain all of us an additional 29 subscribers, and we could be that much closer to winning the general election. Or what am I saying? We could be that much closer to getting to 10K subscribers. J. Eclipse says, what about Glenn Youngkin? Well, I don't know if he's going to run. I think if he were to run against Gavin, that one is a little bit rough. That one's rough because I don't think Gavin's national... I don't think Youngkin's statewide presence to Virginia would translate well to a national level. I think he'd do decent. I think it'd be close, but I think Gavin one-ups him electorally as well. Gavin's a scary option for the Democrats, for Republicans, because orally he speaks very well, even though his record is really bad. He actually ends up speaking so well and carries himself so confidently to the point where it's basically American Psycho. And I think it would be a scary thing because he probably would end up winning the election against DeSantis. I think he'd beat Youngkin. I think he beats a lot of Republicans in 28. Now, unless Biden's approval rating gets so bad to the point where the Democratic Party is just screwed, or if Trump really wins by that much, if Trump ends up winning in a landslide against Biden, then Gavin has a little bit of some problems. Tommy Lee for 10. Thank you very much for the donation, my friend. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate that. Sir Flame a lot. I understand that not a lot of Republicans are excited for Gavin, but a lot of Democrats and some suburban women, some NPCs would end up voting for Gavin. It's just the truth. It's just how it is. Guys, that is basically it for right now. I'll end up probably doing a stream maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday-ish. We'll see how that kind of goes. But guys, make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to go ahead and follow the Twitter, join the Discord, and make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new, if you kind of joined into the stream kind of late and you are brand new to the channel. Make sure to go ahead and subscribe as well. I would greatly appreciate it. I will see you guys very soon.